72. We're back again. This is going to talk a little bit more about Chapter 5. So today we're going to talk about domestic content requirement. So this is a part of Chapter 5. It's another way to help ensure domestic production. So the actual definition of domestic content requirement, it's basically a minimum percentage of the product's total value needs to be produced domestically. So this impacts foreign and also domestic firms, as you can probably tell already. You're creating or your domestic country is implementing something where you stop outsourcing your jobs. Basically, you want to do everything in-house, or you want to have a certain percentage of the overall production done in-house. The reason why we do this is to promote domestic production, help domestic workers. Now, in terms of overall trade, this isn't as efficient because now what you're saying is you need to use resources available in your domestic country to produce this product, when before it was probably cheaper to make it in another country or using different resources from a different place. So now with this, there is some inefficiency, and we'll see how this inefficiency is basically transferred from one country to another, and how another domestic country or domestic industry benefits because of this. So we import and outsource work because factors of production become cheaper, or they're cheaper in different areas. So when we have these restrictions, or when we have domestic content requirements where you're saying some of it needs to be produced within our own domestic borders, you're increasing the cost of production. So as you can already tell that there's going to be inefficiencies. So the example we're going to use is Australia. So this is the domestic demand for Australia. We're looking at the automobile market. In specific, we're looking at Toyota. So we're saying that Australians like to purchase Toyotas from Japan. So this is the supply of Japan. So when there are no domestic content requirements, or you'll see that I'll put DCR, it means the same thing. When there's none of these requirements, you see that the price is much lower and we demand much more. Now, this might be because Japan is much more efficient at making these products. They're using their own resources. So just remember that Japan is using their own resources at this moment. So at the price of $24,000 for a Toyota, Australians, they demand 500. So that's going to be our first step. Now, Japan's income from producing this many cars, it's going to be basically equals 12 million. So they make 12 million because they're using their own resources. Now Japan gets this amount. Let's just say, again, we're looking at Toyota, a Japanese firm. Now, let's say we implement a DCR, or domestic content requirement. So now you have to produce a certain percentage of these Toyotas, or a certain value of it within Australia. So what Toyota is going to do, they're going to set up shop in Australia. They're going to produce some of their stuff out of the country, and then the other half, let's just say, in Australia. So with this, you'll see your cost increase. Your cost increases because, let's just say, Australia has higher costs. So this cost could be higher labor costs, more environmental regulation. So in general, Australian resources in this case are more expensive compared to Japanese. So originally here, these are Japanese resources. It's much more efficient, and we sell at a lower price. We demand more. Now, because we're using Australian resources, in our example, we're assuming it's much more expensive. So now our new supply, so it's the supply with our DCR, the price is going to be 33,000, and what we're going to demand is 300. So now this curve right here, this is saying that we're producing part of it in Australia. Now our costs have increased, so it's not as efficient to produce here. So our overall price will increase as well. Now we demand less because the price is lower. That's just the law of demand. The higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. Now, so this is Toyota. when it was produced in Japan. Now, with the DCR, we're going to calculate the profits. So it's 33,000 multiplied by 300, and it's going to be 9.9 million. So essentially what happened, Japan, individuals in Japan that owned these resources before, so labor, land, capital, that were originally producing it in Japan, or when Toyota was producing in Japan, they lost 12 million. Now that you're producing it in Australia, Australians that own resources, so land, labor, capital in Australia, they gained 9.9 million. So again, you're transferring, we're using more resources in Australia because of this domestic content requirement, as opposed to originally where Toyota was just producing in Japan and exporting their product. So those owners of those resources were making 12 million. Now with the DCR in Australia, they're making 9.9 million. Now there's a deadweight loss to our to this example as well. So if we just looked at consumer surplus originally, our original consumer surplus would be this triangle I'm outlining right now. So this triangle right here would be our consumer surplus. Now, when we added the DCR, our new consumer surplus is this portion right here. Now, this is what we lost. Now, our deadweight loss in specifically is this portion right here. So because we have this DCR, this is going to be our deadweight loss, this triangle right here. Now, to calculate the deadweight loss, we know the formula. It's the difference between these two prices and this base. So our deadweight loss in this case, so if we do the math, it's going to be 900,000. Because of us having a DCR, our deadweight loss will be 9,000. Or 900,000, my apologies. So 900,000, that's just the area of this triangle. This triangle is deadweight loss. And overall, you can see what happens when we do implement this DCR. Because of this, our resources have become more expensive. We're using resources in our home country, so in this case it would be Australia, and we're assuming Australians, you pay a higher labor cost, higher wages, more regulations. So again, your cost of production has increased. Now, this DCR does help domestic firms. It helps domestic firms because you're producing more in-house. It helps domestic workers as well because people have jobs. You're producing more in-house. Yes, the price is higher, but at the end of the day, this helps them. So this is another strategy that you can use that's a non-tariff barrier. It's not essentially a quota. It is not a tariff as well. So again, this is another way to help domestic industries, other strategies that you can implement. So when you think about it, there individuals that are going to be for this, companies are going to lobby for this, or unions are going to lobby for this because you keep jobs in-house. So you keep them within your own borders. And yes, prices do increase, but it's still another efficient way to build up your own domestic production, especially if you're just focused what's inside of your borders. So this is your DCR. This is another thing that you should know for the exam and other assignments in the future. If you guys have any questions, by all means, email me, drop a comment, meet with me on Zoom. Anything that helps. I'm here for you guys. So thank you, and I will see you guys next time.